Spirits of Christmas, Tessa Lamar Novels, Volume 2, written by Kathryn M. Hearst, narrated by Holly Adams. Chapter 16. I woke from a nightmare, disoriented and with my heart pounding. In the darkness, I could make out the shape of a woman sitting on the foot of my bed. I rubbed my eyes and glanced at the clock. 3:33 a.m. Tessa, my daughter. Achila stretched her hand toward me. You're here. All my life, my real mother had come to me when I was at my lowest. Things were tough right now, but they weren't that bad, were they? I placed my hand in her ghostly one. You cannot ignore what you are. You must embrace your true nature, or it will be lost to you. I don't understand. It occurred to me that her hand felt solid against mine. For the first time I could remember, I felt my mother's touch. Your spirit animal needs nourishment, the same as your human body. Neglect her, and she will leave you. My firebird eats? My mind raced. I'd shifted with Bryson a couple of weeks before, but we never hunted in animal form. The thought of it made me ill. She is fire. She consumes all she touches. She is magic. She can give or destroy. The choice is yours. Please, I don't understand. Please, speak to me like I'm a child. Her hand slid from mine. You are my child, but it is time you walk as a woman in grace and wisdom. I don't understand. Trust your heart, not your fear, and walk forward. Her body shimmered as it became more transparent. Don't leave me. I need you. I am with you always. Achila's form faded with each word. I lunged for the place she'd occupied seconds before. Her scent, flowers and citrus, lingered. I pulled the quilt to my face and breathed her in. Why do you always leave me? I rolled her words around in my head. While I understood some of her message, the part about the firebird made no sense. The one person who might know what she meant had left frustrated and angry hours before. I hated that I needed Bryson, but hated that I missed him more. The clock hadn't moved in what felt like hours. In the calm of the night, I replayed my previous conversations with Bryson and Aaron. When did I become so needy? I'd always had a quick temper, but since Charlie died, I'd allowed my anger to make my decisions. Worse, I'd resorted to putting Bryson through hoops to prove his feelings. I'd become the kind of woman I hated, and I felt powerless to change. I gave up on sleep and started a pot of coffee. The apartment needed cleaning, and I couldn't afford to pay someone to do it. I put my earbuds in and cranked the music. When the sun rose 2.5 hours later, I had 3 bags of garbage, 4 loads of dirty clothes, and a squeaky clean place. I stuffed my cell phone and keys into my pocket and dragged my laundry downstairs. At this hour, the washers were empty. So I broke the 1 machine per person limit and used all 4. To pass the time, I scrolled through the news on my phone. Another murder had taken place last night. The musician in a local band called the Blackbirds was found dead in his car outside a local bar. The report didn't go into the cause of death or name the detectives working the case. Once again, I felt compelled to look for more information on the victim. Stuart Black had played lead guitar in his older brother's band for the previous 6 years. The Blackbirds had recently signed a recording contract with a major label. They were named the best indie rock band in the Southeast 2 consecutive years. I clicked on the video and sat back to listen. 3 French hens, 4 calling birds. Calling birds! I repeated the lyrics several times. They rang a bell, held some meaning I couldn't recall. 4 calling birds aggravated me like a sliver of glass in my heel. A quick Google search solved the riddle. The lyrics to the carol had changed over the years and varied by culture. The original song lyric went, 4 collie birds. In regional English, collie was another term for black. 4 blackbirds. I'd dialed Aaron before I considered the early hour or the lunacy of my theory. Yeah. He sounded like I'd woken him. It's Tessa. I need to talk to you. You're gonna think I'm crazy. Well, you probably already think I'm... It's not even 7. Why are you awake? Couldn't sleep. I doubted anything I said to him would make much sense until he had his coffee. I'm coming over. I'm not alone. Those 3 words slammed into me like a freight train. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Tessa? Sorry, I have a spotty connection. It's not important. Call me later, or better yet, I'll send you an email. I hung up before he could reply. Aaron had someone in his bed? He'd told me he loved me. I'd shot him down, but wow. I snatched the empty basket from the floor. Blonde? I bet she's blonde and skinny. The firebird stirred, sending heat through my veins. She wanted to hunt. I chucked the basket across the room and stared as if someone else had thrown it. Okay. Take a deep breath. Killing a police officer won't help. I needed a friend, but at this hour the person I needed would be dead to the world. Haley, my best friend since college, and the only person who understood me when I couldn't understand myself, was 5 months pregnant and not a morning person. I didn't want to put this on her. I need a journal, I said to myself. You should get one. They work wonders. My great-aunt Dottie smiled from the open doorway. I turned and threw my arms around her. She was the last person I expected to see, and the one I needed most. How did you know I was down here? I heard you talking to yourself on my way to your apartment. A little birdie told me you were upset. She smiled and kissed my forehead. I groaned. Bryson? Humor lit her eyes and made years fall from her face. I guess I need a new expression. No, not Bryson. I had a visitor last night. Charlie's worried about you. My heart broke like tempered glass. 1,000,000 tiny pieces too dull to kill and too many to glue back together. I haven't seen him since the day he passed. I didn't know you had the sight. She eased me into a plastic chair. I don't. I talk to him all the time. Sometimes he talks back. He sent me here this morning. Is he well? I mean, does he seem okay? He's his usual happy-go-lucky self. Now, tell me why I'm here. Bryson and I are having trouble. I'm working 2 full-time jobs, and I hurt Aaron. I rested my head on her shoulder and watched my clothes swish through the glass door. I could relate to being churned and scrubbed to a pulp. I wondered if I'd come out clean or in shreds. Darling, those boys both love you. There's bound to be some bumps in the road. You need to listen to your heart. As for work, you call the shots with the tribe. Set reasonable hours or they will run you ragged. It sounds so easy. Baby girl, it is easy once you set your mind to it. She hesitated. Is something going on with your magic? Other than my lack of control? She furrowed her brow. Charlie said you needed to free it or it would suffocate. I sat back. But Sheila came to me. She said something similar, but I have no idea what that means. Me either, darling. But I'd take it seriously if I were you. I wiped my eyes. Dottie, have you heard any rumors from the tribe? Buck summoned Bryson and me to meet with the elders. I don't know what I'm walking into."
"Betty Matthews is telling everyone you performed a ritual and turned her into a sex goddess." Dottie grinned.
"Goodness, I didn't do anything of the sort." I frowned. So much for not talking about what happens in the medicine shop.
Betty's always been the tribe gossip. She got old man Matthews to pop a tent a couple of times after all these years, and it's gone to her head.
"Aunt Dottie," I giggled, "I'll never be able to look him in the eye again."
She laughed. "Just don't look down. Keep your eyes on his face and you'll be all right."
Despite the horror of that mental image, laughter bubbled inside me. I hadn't had a belly buster in a long time. We sat like schoolgirls giggling over a boy until my stomach hurt. Family had a way of driving me crazy one minute and bringing out the best in me the next. Dottie showing up in my laundry room at the crack of dawn reminded me that I wasn't alone, no matter how lonely I felt. Chapter 17. Funny thing about waking up early in the morning, noon felt like nap o'clock. I closed the blinds and snuggled under the covers. Nothing had changed except my outlook on life, but for the first time in weeks, I fell asleep without any trouble. My cell phone rang. I glanced at the screen and sighed. "Hi, Aaron."
"I'm returning your call."
"I'm sorry about throwing you under the bus with Bryson." I laid back and pulled the covers to my chin.
"It's over. He and I talked it out."
His voice held none of its usual warmth. While relieved they'd settled things, I wondered why he didn't want to discuss it with me. Oh, right. He'd moved on. "Good. Well, any luck on the cases?"
"Nothing concrete. Did you pick up anything on your end?"
"Not since the day in Partridge's backyard. This wasn't a good time to pitch him my harebrained idea about the song."
"You haven't done your paperwork."
"I know. I'll come in and finish it tomorrow. I have a thing with Bryson today." I doubted the wisdom of giving myself a deadline with everything going on, but I hoped it would appease Aaron. My good mood slipped away with each passing second. I wanted to hang up so I could salvage my nap.
"You two patch things up?"
I closed my eyes and counted backward from 10. "No, it's work-related." He sighed.
"I have to go."
"Bye, Aaron." I flipped my phone on silent and went back to sleep. About 5 minutes later, or so I thought, 4 hours had passed. I'd overslept for the meeting with the elders in Geneva. Bryson had left several messages. No. I had 2 options: drive and risk traffic and stoplights, or fly. Flying presented its own set of drawbacks, arriving naked and leaving a window open in my apartment, to name a few. Agila's words came back to me, and I decided to let my firebird stretch her wings. If nothing else, time in the sky might calm my temper. I composed a quick text to Bryson. "Overslept. On my way. Have clothes ready." I pulled the blinds and opened the window facing the area with the least amount of traffic. Crouched beneath the sill, I drew my energy and focused on the fire in my core. The firebird burst out in a ball of flames. Before the human part of me could comprehend the change in my visual spectrum, the firebird launched into the air. A flaming bird would draw unwanted attention, but I couldn't focus enough to extinguish the flames. The struggle between my 2 natures continued as I flew over the city. The harder I resisted, the brighter she blazed. My fear fueled her determination until I could no longer fight. She would take me to her mate, to Bryson. We followed the St. Johns River into the wooded area owned by the tribe. Bryson's presence became a homing beacon, drawing us forward at a dizzying speed. The smoke from the ceremonial fire rose in a column marking the location of the meeting. We dove toward the flames, but Bryson's hawk came out of nowhere. He blew past us, soaring higher in a wide circle. The firebird called to him, and he dove straight for us, locking his talons with ours. Spiraling toward the earth, we fell, intertwined, breathless, and enthralled. Our spirit animals had no need for time, or grief, or words. They recognized each other for what they were, lifelong mates. They played, they challenged, they loved in a way our human sides couldn't. Bryson didn't pull back until the flames of the ceremonial fire engulfed us. We shifted to human form, wrapped in each other's arms. I turned my face toward his, and my breath caught in my throat. I expected to see desire. Instead, I saw fear. I whispered, "What's wrong?"
The elders want to bind your magic.
Is that even possible? Why would they do that without talking to me? I couldn't keep the firebird locked inside me. How could someone do it from outside? Fear caused an adrenaline spike that agitated my spirit animal. He looked past me.
Listen to me. We can resist this, but we have to work together.
The elders gathered around the fire. I knew most of them by name, but a few new faces caused my heart to skip. They chanted a spell I didn't recognize. Bryson pulled me close, shielding me with his body.
Focus, Tessa. Don't let them in.
What? How? I struggled to put a wall around us, but magic slammed against me. The muscles in Bryson's shoulders bunched, and his face contorted.
Shift and get out of here.
What's wrong? The firebird battered against my defenses. My fear and anger combined with her need to defend her mate.
They're siphoning my magic.
Fight it! I pulled away and tried to shift. The flames flared around us, but the firebird couldn't break free. With no hope of escape, I turned to Buck. We are Nunnehi. We are as separate as we are a part of the First People. Stop this now! Buck avoided my eyes and continued to chant. When rational thought failed me, the firebird rose up and took control. She burst into existence and drew the ceremonial fire into herself. Seeing a threat to her mate, she unleashed a torrent of flames, forming a protective circle around us. Bryson lay shivering in the ashes. He didn't appear injured, but something was wrong. The firebird threw her head back and called to him as she took flight. The human side of me didn't understand why she'd left him behind, but I trusted her instincts. She swooped low and covered him in her flames. The fire absorbed into his body, and his hawk appeared. He shook his head and stretched his wings, but didn't join us in flight. She circled back and landed beside him. The birds nuzzled and preened to reaffirm their bond. I realized feathers had changed to skin when my cheek brushed against his stubbly chin. The intimacy I'd felt through our spirit animals seeped away, leaving behind the squeeze of uncertainty. I glanced around, expecting to see angry faces, but the wall of flame still shrouded us from the elders. Are you hurt? I ran my hands over his back.
No.
I was so scared when I saw you laying there.
The binding spell worked until you forced me to shift.
His voice bordered on hostile. Why are they doing this? I stood naked, fighting a growing sense of isolation. I'd learned not to feel shame about asking for help, but I didn't have enough information to figure out what I needed. Other than for it all to stop.
That spell you worked on the women caused some problems.
We should go. He drew me closer.
We can't run. We have to face this, or they will come for you again.
Chapter 18. Bryson took my hand as I willed the wall of fire to lower. 13 hostile elders stared at us. The years I spent training to become a mental health counselor taught me that fear manifested as anger. I latched onto the thought that these men feared me as opposed to wanting to hurt me. Buck Oldham took a tentative step forward and tossed a blanket at my feet.
Cover yourself.
Part of me wanted to leave the blanket on the ground to spite him. Choose your battles, Tessa. I grabbed it and wrapped it around my shoulders. My mate requires covering. Bryson tensed as he turned and accepted a blanket from a man I didn't recognize.
Tessa, daughter of Achila, granddaughter of Chasiqua, you have been found guilty of abusing your gifts and manipulating the women of the tribe,
Buck said. I couldn't believe my ears. I hadn't hurt anyone. I have the right to speak in my defense.
Your mate spoke in your defense,
an older man said. We are mated in spirit only. He does not have the right to speak for me. Bryson sucked a breath between his teeth.
Is this true?
Buck glared at Bryson.
It is, as she says.
I'd said the wrong thing, though I'd spoken the truth. I struggled between the instinct to run and my desire for justice. Landmines littered both paths. I'm not going to stand here and discuss my personal life. I will speak on my own behalf. Let me hear the accusations. The old man stepped forward.
My wife has suffered from your magic.
Who is your wife?
Betty Matthews.
I sighed and dipped my chin.
She's behaving like a cat in heat. She refuses to see her responsibilities around the house and is threatening to divorce me.
Buck said,
I've seen Mrs. Matthews. She appears younger.
May I? I smiled. The entire ordeal was a misunderstanding. I'd educate them and everything would be forgiven. Buck nodded. The majority of the women who come to me complain about relationship issues or problems in the bedroom. Most are unhappy with their sex lives.
That is ridiculous,
Old Man Matthews piped up.
That does not give you the right to alter their natural state of being or ruin marriages,
Buck said. I shook my head, refusing to back down. My grandfather's book is full of spells to attract lovers. What I did was no different. Besides, the old ways allow a woman to divorce a man by putting these things outside the front door.
Divorce is a sin.
Mr. Matthews shook his finger at me. That's your opinion. It's not my place to judge. I turned to Buck.
Bryson testified you used some sort of group ritual with the women.
Buck folded his arms and glanced between the two of us.
I said that I didn't know what specific spell she used, but it involved female magic and a circle of women.
Bryson took my hand.
You had no right to try to bind our magic.
John Macon, a new addition to the Council of Elders and self-proclaimed medicine man, stepped forward.
We didn't realize the spell would affect you, Bryson. We must defend our people against the firebird. Our duty is to protect the tribe.
Suddenly the situation made perfect sense. This meeting and the elders' attempt to bind my powers had nothing to do with my ritual, and everything to do with securing Macon's place within the council. Since we had no intention of claiming the position, I didn't see a reason for their overreaction. We could talk this out. I don't solicit business from the tribe, nor are Bryson and I part of this council. If you remember, we denounced any claim to my grandfather's position as medicine man.
Yet, you acknowledge that our people visit you for healing,
Buck said. Would you have us turn them away?
Yes.
John Macon folded his arms.
Our people shouldn't rely on a whelp who doesn't understand her magic and the man she keeps at her beck and call."
I glanced at Bryson's pained face. "Do you have anything to say?"
"I do not have a say in these matters, as I'm not an elder, and I'm your mate in spirit only."
I turned back to the council, less confident without Bryson's support. The people should have the right to choose where they seek help.
"We believe that you are too young and inexperienced to wield the power that you do."
Buck nodded in Bryson's direction.
"Your spirit mate agrees."
I turned to Bryson and saw the truth in his eyes. He'd said practically the same thing to me regarding our relationship. I needed time. Time to grieve, time to grow up, time to be worthy of him. "This is how you feel?" Bryson didn't answer. His silence confirmed my fears. I hung my head and asked Buck, "What would you have me do?"
"Allow us to bind your magic while you train. When you're ready, we will return it slowly,"
Macon said.
"Continue training with Bryson. It's the safest way. You wouldn't want to harm someone because of a mistake."
"No." I shook my head. Had the request come from Buck, I might have considered it. John Macon gave me the creeps. I couldn't allow him to take part of me and lock it up. I might not understand all of my capabilities, but I would learn in time. "If you try to bind me by force, I'll consider it an assault and fight to protect myself, even if my mate won't." Bryson cringed at the last bit, but I didn't care. How dare he tell them I couldn't handle my magic?
"If you will not consent, you will be banned from these lands and our people at sunset."
Buck frowned, having played his hand and lost. "I accept your decision. My grandfather would be ashamed of all of you. What you do comes back tenfold. I only hope I'm there to see it when it does. I'm going to the water before I leave." I turned and walked to the river. I needed purification and a few minutes away from people to clear my head. Banishment seemed harsh, considering this land tied me to my heritage and to Charlie. I added it to a growing list of things I'd lost because of the firebird. The caress of the water desolated my tentative control over my emotions. I dove under and swam to the middle before surfacing. Bryson stood on the shore, watching me. I knew the look. I'd disappointed him. The feeling was mutual. I swam toward him until my feet touched the muddy river bottom. "You should have talked to me about this." He dropped the blanket and stepped into the water, meeting me in the middle.
"I didn't know what they had planned until today. When you didn't show, I had to testify. They twisted my words."
"Maybe so, but you agreed with them that I should be bound." I met his gaze. "I won't allow you or anyone else to take my magic."
"I understand."
"Do you?" I wanted to believe him, to put all of this behind us and move forward.
"When they cast the spell and I lost my magic."
He turned his face toward the sky.
"I knew I could never allow that to happen to you."
"Even if I can't control it?"
"You'll learn."
I doubted I'd learn in time to salvage much of my life. "Why didn't you speak for me? I asked you what to do." He frowned and brushed my hair from my face.
"It wasn't my place. I love you, Tessa, but you cut my balls off back there."
"When I saved you? I would never understand men if I lived to be 200 years old. And with Nunnehi blood, I just might."
"When you claimed me in spirit only."
His crestfallen expression crushed me. "We haven't had sex. We're not mates.
Baby, sex has nothing to do with it.
Then what does it mean?
That we said the words.
His frown deepened.
I'm surprised you don't know this.
How could I possibly know this, Bryson? I thought I was human until a few months ago. I shook my head. Words? Like wedding vows?
Yes, but they're a type of spell. They allow us to share magic and bind our spirits.
We share magic every time we work a spell together.
This is different.
I didn't understand why he argued. Our spirit animals had already mated, and joining our human side would help us with the elders. Let's say the words. He hung his head.
Would you love me, if not for your spirit animal?
I hesitated. I'd asked myself that question 1,000,000 times, and had come to the conclusion I'd never be sure. I don't know.
When you know, we'll say the words.
He studied the sky.
We should leave soon. Storm's coming.
Chapter 19. Bryson drove me back to Winter Park. The clothes I'd left at the tribal house were missing, so I ended up wearing a pair of sweats and a t-shirt borrowed from one of the guys staying there. Both fit me like a sack, but it beat riding around naked. Leaving the land and the people that had meant so much to Charlie left me numb. I'd disappointed him, Bryson, and myself. Bryson had warned me not to test the elders more times than I could count, but I was so sure I could make them see reason. My pride cost me more than I cared to admit. Fire engines blocked the entrance to my apartment building. I chewed my thumb as we eased up the side street to get a better look. Oh my God! I leaned forward and counted stories, though I knew what had happened the moment I saw the trucks. Flames engulfed my apartment. I leaped from the SUV before it came to a full stop and sprinted toward the entrance. A firefighter stopped me before I could reach the door.
Whoa there, you can't go inside.
That's my apartment. Is anyone hurt? I had to try to save what I could. I'd caused this. I'd hurt people just like John Macon said I would.
You live in 428?
He wiped soot and sweat from his brow. Yes, please. My neighbors. Is anyone hurt?
Do you live alone?
I blinked the acrid smoke from my eyes. My feet rooted in place. I couldn't look away from the fire.
As of right now, all the residents are accounted for.
He pointed at a man in a white uniform shirt and hat.
That's Chief Culler. He's going to need to talk to you.
Do I need a lawyer? I don't know why those words fell out of my mouth, but they did, and I couldn't put them back inside. He gave me an odd look, then grinned.
Come on, let's go talk to the chief.
Bryson jogged over as the firefighter introduced me as the girl in 428 to Chief Keller. The chief was an older man with kind eyes.
It looks like the fire started in your bedroom. I'm afraid your apartment is a total loss.
Bryson put his arm around my shoulder for support. I wanted to shrug it off. I didn't deserve tenderness, though I craved it. I don't care about my stuff. I'm worried about the people who live in the building. I leaned against Bryson, searching for that sense of home, but it had vanished along with my worldly possessions.
We're still putting out the fire, but we've accounted for all of the residents and maintenance staff.
He glanced up at the building, then back at me.
Did you leave a candle burning or something hot, like a curling iron plugged in?
I shook my head and pulled away from Bryson. The distance between us choked me as much as the smoke.
Do you have a place to stay?
The chief glanced at us, no doubt assuming I wore his clothes. My family is local. I patted my pockets and realized I had no phone or keys. My purse was in the apartment.
Tessa.
Bryson handed me his cell. I stared at it, trying to remember why I needed a phone. The picture from our first barbecue is upstairs. He tilted his head.
We can take more pictures.
But I loved it. Of all the things I'd lost, I moored a cell phone shot of the three of us in a cheap drugstore frame. It didn't take a psychology degree for me to realize I'd connected the photo to my hopes for the future. Every night since we'd broken up, I'd stared at it as I went to sleep. Someone called my name from across the parking lot. Aaron ran over and pulled me into an embrace. He eased back, smoothed my hair, and hugged me again.
I heard the call over the radio. Are you all right?
I wasn't home. He pulled back, looked at my borrowed clothes, and released me. Aaron and Bryson exchanged a look before he turned and spoke to Chief Keller.
I'm Detective Burns. Anyone hurt? No, it looks clear. We're putting out the last of it now.
Keller stepped away to answer a call. I can't stand here and watch my life burn. I need to go to Maze. Before I'd messed things up, that statement would have earned me 2 offers of a ride and a staring contest between the 2 men. Today, neither of them seemed eager to spend 20 minutes in a car with me. After what felt like an eternity, Bryson said,
I live next door. You can ride with me.
Thank you. I handed him back his phone. I needed to give Graham May and Dottie a heads up, but some things needed to be said face to face. Aaron ran his hand over the back of his neck.
Can I call you later?
My phone's in the apartment.
I have the number to May's landline.
He looked at Bryson and me as if summing up the situation.
I could come by if that's easier.
It's been a shit day. I'm not really in the mood for company tonight. I added finding a locksmith and having a new set of car keys made to my list of things to do. I wanted out of there, but Bryson showed no signs of moving. Aaron sighed.
It's business. The murder investigations.
I stared at him for a beat. I can't.
All right, let's get you to May's.
Bryson set his hand on the small of my back and guided me to his SUV. He opened my door and reached across to pull the seatbelt around me. I stared out the windshield without seeing what lay beyond the glass. In the dimly lit vehicle, my reflection stared back at me with accusing eyes. How many people, besides myself, had I rendered homeless with my carelessness? Bryson slid into the driver's seat and started the engine.
Tessa.
Don't, I whispered.
This isn't your fault.
I shifted in my bedroom. I lost control as soon as I let the firebird out. It is my fault. Chapter 20. I walked into Graham May's house and realized I no longer had a place here. Dottie had moved into my room, and Bryson had moved into her and Charlie's house when we opened the medicine shop. My choices for beds involved a lumpy sofa or Bryson's pull-out couch.
Tessa Marie, what's the matter?
Aunt Dottie came into the kitchen. Is Graham May sleeping? My voice sounded like the floor vibrated when I spoke.
Sit. I'll go get her.
Dottie gave me one last concerned look and hurried to wake May. I sank into a kitchen chair and waited. Maddie put her head in my lap and whined. I absently petted her until May came into the room. May took one look at me and went for the whiskey bottle in the cabinet over the stove. She grabbed 3 glasses and joined us.
What's happened?
I burned my apartment down.
Honey, tell us what happened.
I thought I had told them. Maybe I didn't say the words out loud. I burned my apartment down. May nodded and set her hand on mine. You said that, darling. Tell us how it happened. I told them the entire story. From losing control to Buck and the elders trying to take my powers, to my troubles with Bryson and Aaron. My pathetic story took 2 shots of whiskey to finish. When I got to the part where Bryson dropped me off, They sat with stunned expressions.
Jesus bless you. How are you still standing?
May stood and wrapped her arms around me.
My poor girl.
I didn't know what I expected, but I didn't expect this. The moment May touched me, the floodgates opened and I started to cry. I held on to her as I had when I was little with a skinned knee. Dottie joined us in the embrace, rubbing my back and whispering it would be all right. May poured us another round, and the ladies took their seats. I felt better after letting it out into the open. If anyone could help me come up with a plan, these two could.
Let's figure this out.
May grinned and slid another shot my way. The clock read after midnight. Maybe we should get some sleep and leave the plan until morning? Dottie squeezed my hand.
Are you going to be able to sleep?
No, but May shook her head.
No buts. Dottie, get a pen and paper.
I didn't know what they had in mind, but I thought one more person should be at the table. Should I call Bryson?
No,
they said in unison. Maddie barked and sat next to the table panting. From the wild look in her eyes, she wanted in on the action.
Seems to me he's part of the trouble.
Dottie returned to the table and flipped to a clean page.
Let's prioritize. What's the most urgent problem?
I need necessities. Clothes, keys, phone, new ID. She jotted it all down.
I can drive you around tomorrow after church to pick up some basics.
I can't go to church in sweats. May frowned.
I suppose the Lord will give us a pass if we miss service tomorrow.
I breathed a sigh of relief. I'll call Haley. We were almost the same size before she got pregnant.
Good thinking. Lord knows she won't see those tight jeans of hers ever again.
May laughed. She can lose weight, Graham.
Not when she's carrying that baby in her backside. Trust me, I know.
May patted her ample hip.
Moving on.
Dottie tapped the paper. The Red Cross can help you get a new driver's license.
Don't waste your time at the DMV.
I need a place to live. I hated to bring it up because I didn't want to displace Dottie. She and May seemed to enjoy living under the same roof.
May said, easy. There's an extra room at Charlie's.
I use it for an office. Dottie shook her head.
Bryson needs to empty out the third bedroom. It's time we got rid of all that extra stuff. I loved Charlie, but the man was a pack rat.
I thought about Charlie's house, with its 3 bedrooms and a den. It'd work, except for the fact that Bryson and I weren't on the best of terms. Just until the renter's insurance check comes and I can get a new apartment. Dottie took notes.
We love having you close, but a young woman needs her privacy. I think it'll do you good to stay at Charlie's with Bryson.
May rubbed her hands together.
I have a plan.
Oh, boy. I didn't care for the devil in her eyes. Next problem?
Dottie grinned. Buck Oldham and that damned council.
May frowned.
Do you like working with the tribe?
I shrugged. I like helping people.
Answer the question,
May said. I'd asked myself the same question numerous times. I prefer my work with the police department.
Good. I'll start spreading the word that the council banished you and demanded that you stop seeing folks. Let Buck and the rest of those old geezers deal with the complaints.
May sat back in her chair.
As for learning to control your magic, that's going to take time and practice. If you slow down, it'll come.
Bryson is supposed to help me, but he makes it worse. She pressed her lips into a line and drew her brows together. Okay, I make it worse because I can't control my feelings, I corrected.
Glad you can see it for what it is.
She pointed at Dottie and motioned to the pad.
Write this down. The boys.
I'll handle the boys. I didn't want to get into my personal life,
but the looks on their faces told me I had no choice. Yes, you will, and let me tell you how to do it. May gave me a toothless grin. You're too available. You work with Aaron. Let him see you every day. Be polite, but not too friendly. Put on some makeup, do your hair. Let him see what he's missing out on, but don't go out with him. Okay. I didn't like the idea that I made myself too available, but I doubted advice from my elderly great-grandmother would help. May drained her glass. Do what you need to do during the day. Bryson works on his sculptures late into the night. Make sure he sees you in cute pajamas when he comes inside. Be sure to tell him goodbye when you leave for work in the morning looking nice. Get all dressed up and go out with Haley. He'll come around. When he does, you make him wait.
But won't that leave me in the same mess I was in with the two of them?
She shrugged. Do you want to choose?
I chewed my thumbnail while I thought it over.
Dottie pulled my hand from my mouth. I'm adding fake nails to the list of things to do.
I don't know which one I want. I love Bryson, but I don't know if I love him because of what we are or because I love him.
Dottie nodded. And Aaron?
It's easy with Aaron. Or it was. He's seeing someone else.
May shook her head. You know that old saying, if you love someone, set them free?
Yes, ma'am.
It's total horse hockey. If you want him, go get him by making him come to you.
I tilted my head. But you said I was too available? Plus, Aaron is an outsider. The elders won't allow it.
You don't answer to the elders. She smacked my hand. Before you go too far down either path, you need to make up your mind which one you want.
What if I don't want either?
May shook her head. Then, hallelujah, find someone else. Honestly, girl, didn't you learn anything from Darlene?
I grinned. I always figured she clobbered them over the head and dragged them home.
May leaned close and whispered, her hoo-ha isn't magical. She puts out the bait, and the men bite. In your case, you have to put out better bait so you catch a good one.
Chapter 21. The following Saturday, I had a new cell phone, makeup, unmentionables, 2 outfits, and shoes, all courtesy of Walmart. I also had a key to the car I couldn't drive without a license, new credit cards on the way, and a claim with my renter's insurance company. Haley had dropped off 2 bags of clothes and various bottles of lotions and potions to make me feel better. May had supervised Bryson and Aaron as they took the junk out of the 3rd bedroom, scrubbed it clean, painted, and moved my new things into the room. She'd promised them dinner in exchange for their troubles, but I suspected she'd thrown in meatloaf and mashed potatoes so she could observe as I practiced her strategy with the guys. Though I'd followed her advice all week, I didn't think either had noticed me. Male voices carried from the dining room into the bathroom, where I stood putting on the finishing touches, lip gloss and borrowed earrings. I'd washed my hair and let it dry naturally. As a result, the red curls hung in corkscrews down the center of my back. Haley's skinny jeans and soft green sweater looked good, though the pant legs bunched at my ankles. I plastered a smile on my face and walked out of the bathroom. Aaron and Bryson stood when I entered the room, though neither seemed to know what to say. Thanks for helping out today. I glanced at the table, then walked to the kitchen to get the butter and a pitcher of sweet tea.
You're welcome,
Aaron said.
Bryson followed me. Are you holding up okay?
As well as can be expected. I handed him the tea. Thanks for setting up the room. He nodded, still looking at me as if I were something under glass. It's only until I get money from the insurance company.
May mentioned that.
I smiled and walked to the table.
Once we all settled, May took mine and Bryson's hands. Dear Lord, thank you for our many blessings and for the food we are about to eat. I hope you don't mind that we missed service last week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The men exchanged a look. In all the times we'd shared a meal, May had never once said grace with a man at the table. An awkward silence hung in the air as we dug in. May cleared her throat. Tessa, what did you decide to do about working at the medicine shop? I choked on my greens and took a swig of tea to wash them down. She knew darned well what I'd decided. I looked across the table at Bryson. I'm going to take a step back and focus on my work at the police station. His shoulders tensed as he nodded. If that's what you think is best. May patted Bryson's hand. Maybe you should focus on your art. Buck doesn't appreciate what you and Tessa do for the tribe. It might teach the council to treat you better. Bryson flashed her a quick grin, then met my gaze. I couldn't agree more. May continued. It was Tessa's idea. I looked at her with wide eyes. She'd lied at the table with the same mouth she'd said grace. Isn't that right, Tessa? May grinned. They don't seem to appreciate the work we do. I stuffed a forkful of potatoes in my mouth before she forced me to lie again. Aaron watched the exchange with a curious expression. Have you gone through the evidence on any of the cases? I held up a finger and swallowed hard, thankful for the change of subject. I'm waiting for the lab to finish processing everything. Has ballistics cross-matched the weapons between the Reyes, Mercier, and Black cases? He set down his fork and gave me his full attention. I don't think so. Why? I have a hunch it might be the same guy. Aaron shook his head. The M.O. was entirely different. Black was a drug deal gone south. Same kind of weapon? A .22, but they're common. Tell me your theory. Dottie put her napkin on her plate and stood. Aaron dipped his chin. I'm sorry, Miss Dottie. This isn't dinner conversation. Oh, it's not bad. It's been a long while since I ate at this table. I'm afraid it's brought back some memories. She took her plate to the kitchen. Excuse me. I followed Dottie. Would you like to talk? We can go for a walk. Are you sure you want to leave May alone with them? I grinned and hooked my arm through hers. Let's go sit on the porch swing. We can hear if someone calls for help. The crisp night air reddened my cheeks as we settled on the swing and listened to the crickets. I hated seeing her upset, but it felt good to be there for her for a change. I have my moments when I still can't believe he's gone, she whispered. Me too. He's proud of you. She turned and smiled. He always was, but with everything you've had to face since he passed. My chest tightened. How could anyone be proud of me these days? I keep messing up. Your grandfather wasn't as perfect as you think. He was wild when he was younger. She stared into the distance with a smile. We met at a teen mixer in the old tribal community building. He was the most handsome man I'd ever seen. They let a white girl go to a dance? I poked her side. I'd heard Charlie's side of the story, but never Dottie's. I snuck in with a friend. She elbowed my side. I thought I had a crush on her brother, but that changed when I met Charlie. Love at first sight? As close as it gets, I reckon. She turned toward me and lowered her voice. My friend's brothers were shifters, wolves. I didn't know it at the time. I was there to see John, but by the end of the night I'd forgotten all about him. Unfortunately, he hadn't forgotten about me. I swallowed bile as things fell into place in my mind.
Is he the shifter that attacked you? She looked down at her hands. After the dance, I went to a sleepover at my friend's house. I woke up, and John was on top of me. Oh, Dottie, no. She shook her head. I screamed and fought him off before he could violate me, but in the struggle he shifted. I still don't remember much other than waking up in Charlie's shop. He'd broken the rules and used magic to heal me. I'd never heard this story. Charlie had told me about the dance and how he knew she would become his wife, but little else. The elders found out? She sighed. He had to keep me there for 2 moon cycles to make sure I wouldn't turn. My parents reported me missing, but back in those days, they didn't have the internet, and not everyone had television. It took a while, but someone recognized my face on a flyer and knew I'd been at the dance. Did they find you with Charlie? Yes. The council sent people to ask him about me. When they saw I was alive, one of them shot me. I stopped the swing. I'd always wondered how Dottie survived the attack. I knew Charlie had claimed her as his own, but never thought to ask how. What happened then? She avoided my eyes. Charlie killed the man who shot me and buried him out back. My grandfather committed murder and buried the body in the backyard? He'd defied the elders for a woman? My face must have shown my horror because she took my hand. We've all done things we regret. I nodded, though still stunned by the revelation. Dottie, how badly were you hurt in the attack? Charlie told me later that I'd died. He brought me back by sharing a piece of his soul. My world screeched to a halt. I took her hand and whispered, Bryson did the same thing with Aaron. I wondered. I couldn't understand how 2 men were in love with the same woman and remained so close. She stared into my eyes. Tessa, you have to be careful with those 2. They're bound together, as much as you and Bryson, maybe more. Chapter 22. I left Dottie to her thoughts and went inside. May dozed in an easy chair while Bryson and Aaron did the dishes. They laughed as they worked, moving like brothers who knew each other's next move. Physically, they couldn't be more different, Bryson with his dark Cherokee looks and Aaron a blue-eyed wasp. As they noticed me in the doorway, the mood changed. Bryson focused on scrubbing the meatloaf pan, while Aaron put away the dinner plates. Need any help? I'd never felt so out of place in this house. We're almost done. Aaron closed the cabinet. Tell me about your hunch. What? I sat at the kitchen table, trying to stay out of the way. The cases. Why do you think they're related? Aaron gave me an odd look. You sure you're okay? How's Dottie? We're fine. Both of us. Fine. I drew a breath and gathered my courage. I knew he'd laugh when I told him my theory. You know the song, The 12 Days of Christmas? Yeah. The 3 ladies in the Mercier case? They performed under the stage name 3 French Hens. Okay. He held back a grin. Stuart Black performed in a band called the Blackbirds. In the original song, 4 calling birds were 4 collie birds. Collie means black. Aaron chuckled. And Mr. Partridge in a pear tree? An orange tree. I stood. Forget it, it's late. I'm tired. I shouldn't have mentioned it. Bryson glanced over his shoulder. It's a strange coincidence. I held my arms out wide. Thank you. He dried his hands and looked at Aaron. Anybody knock off 2 turtle doves? They laughed and laughed until I stood and stomped out of the room.
You can both kiss my lily white Tessa Marie. Watch your mouth, May said from the chair.
Yes, ma'am. I plopped onto the couch and pulled out my new cell phone. My computer had burned along with my apartment, but I used the phone to Google Simon and Marty Reyes. I almost fell over when entry after entry of the couple popped up.
Aaron, you might want to come in here.
He walked into the living room with Bryson on his heels, both still snickering like a couple of kids. I handed him my phone, and the smile on his face faded. The web pages referred to the couple as dos tortolitas, 2 turtle doves.
Holy shit!
Aaron gave the phone to Bryson. Language! May pointed a bony finger.
Sorry, ma'am.
Aaron ran his hand over his head.
Let me guess. Those tortolitas means 2 turtle doves?
I grinned. It sure does. Bryson went a little pale as he set the phone in my hand.
Well, I'll be damned.
May shook her head.
I believe you two owe Tessa an apology. I'm sorry I doubted you.
Aaron leaned over and gave me a half hug.
I need to step outside and call Samuels.
Bryson sat and put his elbows on his knees. He didn't look at me, but he sounded sincere.
I'm sorry that I've been so standoffish. I know you're going through a lot right now.
I wanted to reach for his hand and tell him it was okay, but I caught May's eye. She shook her head an eighth of an inch. I understand. You have your own problems to deal with. He looked at me with a heart-breaking expression and stood.
I'm heading out for a bit.
I wondered where he was going, but let it go. I didn't want to seem too available. Let me walk you out.
Thank you for dinner. It was delicious, as always.
He gave May a quick hug.
Aaron and I planned to grab a beer.
I smiled, though I'm sure it came out looking like a snarl.
You could come along?
She has to be up early for Sunday school. May stood and placed herself between Bryson and me, like a 4'0" bodyguard. He looked at me over her head.
All right. Maybe another time. Good night, Tessa. I'll see you later unless you're asleep when I get home.
Good night, Bryson. May stuck her jaw out and put her hands on her hips until he walked outside. I collapsed onto the couch with a groan. May smacked my thigh. Buck up, girl. The plan's working. Graham, I hate this. I don't like your plan, not one bit. I threw my arm across my face like I did when I was a little girl. Aaron came back inside. He looked from May to me and smiled.
Thanks for dinner. Call me if you need any more help moving things.
I will, thank you. May stayed in her spot, watching him.
Tessa, Bryson and I are heading out for a beer.
May wagged her finger.
I already told the big one outside that she has to be up early. You two run along and leave her to get some sleep. Don't get into any trouble, and you better not let me hear about you drinking and driving.
Aaron took a step back.
Yes, ma'am. We'll only have one, I swear. Y'all have a good night.
Watching May in action took the sting out of staying home. He left so fast I thought she might have swatted him with a newspaper. Graham, you're enjoying this way too much. It's been a long time since I had men to boss around. She leaned over and flicked my nose. Off to bed with you. Tomorrow is Sunday. Chapter 23. Sundays with May hadn't changed much since I was a toddler. Wake up before the sun, eat breakfast, and get to church before the good parking places were full. I found comfort in the predictable routine, even if it did involve getting up early and putting on pantyhose. 2 things I hated more than lima beans and liver. We piled into Bryson's SUV, dressed in our Sunday best. Mine, a borrowed dress from Haley that hugged my curves without being too sleazy for the Lord.
Bryson seemed to enjoy it. I'd caught him looking several times. May cleared her throat from the back seat. Thanksgiving's only a few days away. Dottie and I have a grocery list. I'll do the shopping another day. My smile faltered. A Sunday trip to Super Walmart would eat hours of my time and patience. Stop interrupting. Dottie and I will do the shopping. Yes, ma'am. She shook her head. You can give an old woman 5 minutes to discuss Thanksgiving. Lord knows this one might be my last. At my age, I can't take things for granted. Bryson chuckled. You're as spry as a spring fox, May. You flatterer. She sat straighter. Darlene and that hippie are coming. Dottie and I have decided not to invite the rest of the family this year. I turned in my seat, not believing my ears. May always made a huge deal out of the holidays. Everything all right? We've never had a Thanksgiving without the whole family. Dottie offered me a reassuring smile. Your mama's having some problems with morning sickness, and Stoney's picky. I'm not much in the holiday spirit this year. We thought it best to keep things quiet for all our sakes. Feeling guilty, I nodded. I couldn't agree more. A small family gathering sounds perfect. Bryson pulled into the church parking lot and came to a stop. We arrived 5 minutes later than our usual time and hit a bottleneck, followed by cars zinging every which way. Anyone who didn't believe in God should come and watch the miracle that happened on Sundays when everyone made it inside in one piece. Bryson, hurry up. There's a spot near the door. May swatted his shoulder. She'd unbuckled and wedged herself between the front seats to better backseat drive. It's a handicapped spot, Grandma. I craned my neck and searched for a vacant space. I'll pull up front and drop everyone off, then park. Bryson glanced in the side mirror and cut the wheel. If you wouldn't mind. May sat back and folded her hands in her lap. The perfect Southern lady, with her pale yellow dress and a cotton puff of hair teased to perfection like meringue on a pie. He stopped the Rover at the front entrance of the building and hopped out to open May's door. She took his hand as he helped her down. Little old ladies and big SUVs didn't quite work, but she acted as if she stepped out of a carriage. Dottie, on the other hand, opened her door and slid on her fanny until her feet touched the concrete. Not the most graceful way to exit a vehicle, but she didn't seem to mind. We'll meet you inside. I pulled down the visor to check my lipstick. Oh, no, you are coming with us. I'm not taking a chance on you getting lost between here and women's Bible study, May said. Graham, Bryson and I are going to the young adult class today. I had no desire to sit through Bible study when the next youngest person in the room had collected Social Security since before I was born. May turned to Bryson. You best make sure the two of you get to class. You need all the help you can get. I'll know if you play hooky. I wouldn't dream of missing it. He grinned and climbed back into the driver's seat. Boy, someone's full of piss and vinegar this morning. She's worried about Thanksgiving. Cooking for everyone is a lot to give up. Bryson drove toward the edge of the parking lot. I think she's due for a break. She's been cooking holiday meals forever. I glanced at him and grinned. Want to cut class and go to Starbucks? No. May would beat us with a switch. He laughed and opened his door. Let's take the afternoon and work on your control. Oh, I can think of a few ways to get the firebird worked up. You propositioning me in a church parking lot? He chuckled. I wouldn't dare do such a thing. He rubbed his chin. We should get inside before lightning strikes us both. Good luck keeping your mind on the service. I winked and hopped out. I took my time, swishing my hips from side to side as I made my way to the glass doors. To heck with May's plan. If I had to sit through Bible study and Sunday service, I might as well have a little fun. After an hour of learning about the sins of premarital sex, a 2-hour sermon on honoring thy mother and father, and another hour discussing the message over May's pork roast and winter vegetables, I wanted a nap. Bryson dried the last of the dishes and hung the towel.
Ready to get to work?
I eyed him, contemplating feigning a headache.
Come on.
He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door.
May, Dottie, if you'll excuse us, Tessa and I will be in the yard practicing.
May surveyed her clean kitchen. The woman hadn't done a dish since Bryson moved in next door. Thanks for cleaning up. You two have fun, and take that dog with you. Maddie lifted her head and looked from May to us. She groaned as she stood, stretched and crawled from beneath the table. I could relate. Graham, she should stay inside. I'd hate it if she caught fire. Not to mention Maddie had an annoying habit of putting herself between Bryson and me any time we touched. Oh, all right. May patted her leg, and Maddie followed her into the living room. My great-grandmother might grumble about the dog, but she'd insisted on putting a huge pillow next to her easy chair so Maddie could see the TV. I stepped outside into the midday sun and smiled. In Florida, the autumn sky was bright blue, the air warm but fresh, and the trees still had their leaves. I longed for Dottie's lounge chair and a good book, the way people were supposed to spend Sundays.
You look happy.
Bryson watched me from the shade of the porch. I guess I am. I needed a regular day. Any sense of normal would end the moment we started working on my magic, but a girl could dream. He looked away.
We should go to the backyard.
Did I say something wrong? I hurried to catch up, taking 2 strides for each one of his. He slung his arm around my shoulder.
I wish I had known you before you had magic.
Why's that?
I bet you smiled more.
He opened the gate and led me to the backyard. I didn't quite know how to respond to that. I had smiled more back then, but I couldn't say if it changed when the firebird came or when Charlie died. Should I strip?
Not yet. You're pretty good at shifting when calm. I want to bring you to the edge and see if you can hold back.
I couldn't help but giggle.
Something funny?
He pulled me close. Not a thing. My breath caught. I knew what would happen next, or at least I hoped I did. Bryson leaned forward and devoured my mouth. He wasted no time on preliminary kisses, sweet nibbles, or eye-gazing. We went from 0 to 60 in the space of a millisecond. He slid his hand to the back of my neck and curled his fingers in my hair, using the leverage to turn my head how he pleased. He lowered his lips to my neck, kissed a line to my collarbone, and bit down until I made a noise. The ember in my gut came to life as if someone pumped bellows inside me. The firebird stirred and called to her mate. Bryson moaned against my skin. The spirit animal had heard the cry and rose to the surface.
Tessa, hold back. Don't shift.
His lips moved against my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. I focused on the fire inside me. Rather than envisioning dousing the flames, I imagined a fire trench around her, something to hold her in place while she burned. The firebird shrank back, and I drew a breath, no longer overwhelmed with the need to shift.
Good.
Bryson shuddered as his magic stilled. Is this only about teaching me control, or do you want to kiss me? He frowned.
Tessa.
I slapped his face hard enough that my palm burned. You can't have it both ways. You can't tease me to death one minute and tell me sex isn't the answer the next. He rubbed his cheek.
I have 2 choices. Make you experience a great deal of pain, or make you feel good.
Let's try pain.
He grabbed my wrist and pulled me against him.
It's never just about training. You know that.
I knew from the curl of his lip and the dimple in his cheek he didn't take me seriously. I'm done here. He turned my face toward his and smiled.
I miss you.
I jerked my head back, not ready to back down. We see each other all the time. How can you miss me?
I miss us, crazy woman.
He rested his forehead against mine.
We're good together. Can we try again?
The sincerity in his voice melted my anger. Only if you'll consider my opinions before you make a decision. I want a partner, not a lord and master.
I can do that.
I narrowed my eyes. He'd agreed without a single counterpoint. I'm serious. He put his finger against my mouth and whispered,
I'm going to kiss you because I want to. If the bird gets in the way, we'll use it as a teachable moment and try again.
I held his gaze until our breathing synced. I've missed you too. He grabbed my backside and lifted me off my feet. I wrapped my arms and legs around him while kissing his mouth. His fingers dug into my bottom as he lowered to his knees, then laid me on the grass. I broke the kiss. My dress. He did a ninja move, and I ended up in his lap facing him. Bryson cupped my face and sucked my lower lip into his mouth. The firebird remained where I'd left her, but the magic inside me swirled and churned like the sea. I pressed against him and ground my hips into his, desperate for this, for him.
Hold on, Tessa. Focus.
He growled against my mouth. I concentrated on the pressure between my thighs, the feel of his body against mine, the rub of his stubble on my face, until I thought I might explode. I want you. He slid his hand under my dress and did something fantastic with his fingers.
Hold the magic back.
A different kind of magic pressure built inside me. It had been ages since something felt this good. My thighs tensed as I hung on the precipice. I held my breath and gritted my teeth. One more second. The firebird ripped through me with enough force to sway the trees surrounding the yard. She screamed as she streaked through the brilliant blue sky. I held on to a thread of my humanity, grieving for what I'd just missed with Bryson. We'd come so close. Chapter 24. Embarrassed and frustrated, I managed to avoid Bryson the entire morning. He'd asked to discuss what happened in the backyard, but by the time we'd returned home, the sun had set and I was exhausted. The truth was, I hadn't wanted to talk about it then, and I didn't now. Everything would be fine, as long as he held true to his promise to try again. I slipped out of the house before he woke and hightailed it to May's for breakfast. Carbs and fat were a poor substitute for an orgasm, but I'd take what I could get. May turned from the stove when I came through the front door.
Good morning. How'd practice go yesterday?
All right. I poured myself a cup of coffee and slumped into a chair, praying May wouldn't ask what we did during our training sessions. They didn't always involve making out, but it was the fastest way to get my spirit animal's attention.
That doesn't sound too convincing.
She set a plate of biscuits and sausage gravy in front of me. It's maddening. I shoveled food into my mouth before she could ask any more questions. Dottie joined us, already dressed.
Morning. How'd it go last night?
May grinned.
She says all right, but she's irritable and sucking down breakfast like she's not seen food in months.
Dottie patted my shoulder.
We've all had nights like that. The harder you work, the more frustrating it gets.
My cheeks burned. I didn't dare look up and see their expressions.
Either my mind floated in the gutter or they were picking on me. Dottie laughed. I know what'll cheer you up. Come to Walmart with me. I need to get a few things for Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, yeah, that's my idea of fun. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin and sat back, admiring the clean plate. May shook her head. Sarcasm is ugly, Tessa Marie. I thought about my alternatives, a conversation with Bryson or shopping with Dottie. Sorry, I'm cranky today. I'd love to go with you. All righty then. She hopped up and walked into the other room with a bounce in her step. I smiled, knowing I'd made the right choice. She returned with her purse on her shoulder and car keys in her hand. Ready? Walmart on a Monday morning reminded me of a bar 10 minutes after closing. Most everyone had cleared out, and the ones left behind looked like desperate zombies. I snagged a cart and met Dottie in the produce section. I'm thinking apple pie with a crumb topping. She hoisted a bag of apples into the buggy. Sounds good, as long as we have ice cream and pumpkin pie for leftovers. I don't know how you stay so skinny. I hardly considered myself thin. I had enough backside for 2 people. We meandered up one aisle and down the next, with Dottie adding items as we went. She tossed a box of cornstarch into the cart, then marked it off the list.
Tessa Lamar, good to see you.
John Macon sneered as he walked up the baking aisle. My manners forced me to reply. Mr. Macon? The color drained from Dottie's face, and she held on to the buggy as if she might fall. Macon looked her over and turned back to me.
I hear there was a fire at your apartment complex. You didn't have anything to do with that, did you?
I didn't hate many people, but John Macon had earned a spot at the top of my list. Everything about him, from his cocky smile to his slicked back hair and too tight jeans, irritated me.
No need to answer. I can tell by the look in your eye you did. It's a good thing no one was hurt.
He glanced at Dottie again, and a light came on behind his eyes.
Dorothy, it's been a long time, damned long time. I was sorry to hear about Charlie.
She nodded and dipped her chin. I didn't know how they knew each other, but I'd bet my middle finger it wasn't good. We should get going. John stepped in front of the cart.
Have you given any more consideration to Buck's request? You know it's the prudent thing to do.
Not a single, solitary thought. I smiled and pulled the buggy forward, forcing him to step aside. Dottie clutched the handle and hurried us down the aisle.
You should talk to her, Dorothy. Tell her what happens when young girls don't do as they should.
John Macon called after us. Tears filled Dottie's eyes. We should go. All right. I slung her purse over my shoulder and held her hand as we left the cart and walked outside. I wanted to go back in there and tell Mr. John Macon what he could do with his threats, but Dottie trembled as she sat in the car. A million questions came to mind, but I chose the one that scared me the most. Did he hurt you? She turned to me, alarmed. It was a very long time ago. My swirling brain came to a screeching halt. He's the shifter? Your friend's brother? He's dangerous, Tessa. You need to stay clear of him. Is it all right if I tell Bryson what happened? I had to do something. I couldn't let this man terrorize her, or me, for that matter. I'd rather you didn't tell him about what happened to me. Yes, ma'am. I'll tell him about the threats and nothing else. We drove home without a word. After I had settled Dottie into her easy chair, I walked the path between May's and Charlie's. Dottie had told me her story in confidence, and I wouldn't break her trust. Bryson needed to know about the bad blood between Dottie and Macon.
in case the man started trouble. I hoped I could walk the tightrope without lying to Bryson. He came out of his room when I walked through the door.
Hey, where did you go?
To Walmart with Dottie.
What's wrong?
He stepped closer and searched my eyes. We ran into John Macon. He accused me of causing the fire. Bryson sighed and tucked my hair behind my ear.
Are you okay?
I shrugged. He said I should reconsider Buck's request to ban my magic. Said bad things happen to girls who don't do as they're told. Bryson's energy shifted as his spirit animal woke.
That son of a bitch.
Easy. I handled him. I snuggled into Bryson's chest to calm him down. Dottie is afraid of Macon. There's a history there that's none of our business, but if he shows up here, keep him away from her.
He'd be a fool to come here.
He squeezed me tighter.
Last night,
I pulled back and smiled. I was upset and needed time alone, but I'm over it now. I think I'm making progress. A slow smile curled his lips.
you'll get there. Don't be so hard on yourself.
The look in his eyes reminded me of the previous evening. I had to look away before I lost myself in him again. I need to call the insurance company. Aaron is picking me up in an hour on his way to the station. He kissed my brow.
Do what you need to do. I'll see you tonight.
Chapter 25. Replacing a driver's license without a birth certificate, social security card, or any other form of identification required an act of God. The caseworker from the Red Cross swore she would get the documents and told me to be patient. Adding insult to injury, the insurance company had to wait until the fire department filled their report before they would pay my claim. With the holiday weekend looming, I could be hanging in limbo for another week or two. Aaron drove me to the station to pick up the uniform shirts and victim's advocate badge I'd requested. Whatever progress I'd made with him had vanished, along with his good mood.
We can't find a common link between the cases. The MOs are different, and the Vics don't have anything obvious in common.
He took a corner quicker than he should have, and I smashed against the door. I've had a rough few days. I'd rather not add car accident to my list. I turned the radio off and drew a cleansing breath. My frazzled nerves couldn't take the noise. Any chance you can get me into the Mercier scene? His hands tightened on the wheel.
I can try. The chief and the building's management are working hard to keep the case away from the media.
I can see why they would, considering what they charge for rent. But why does the chief care? Samuel said something about orders to keep the case under wraps?
Ms. Mercier was dating the mayor.
Aaron watched my reaction. Eyes on the road. I took a minute to sort the new information. He's married, with a stable of grown kids. He nodded. Why on earth would he cheat on his wife with a woman his age? As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I realized how ridiculous they sounded. I mean, I thought men like that went for young model types.
That's a stereotype, and I'm pretty sure it's ageist. Ms. Mercier was a beautiful woman and very talented.
I cringed. So the mayor is pulling strings to keep this case quiet because he's afraid the affair will come out? Is he a suspect?
No, he has an airtight alibi.
Aaron pulled into the parking lot. How'd you find out about the affair?
She had a picture of the two of them on her nightstand, and his private number showed up on her cell phone records.
He opened his door.
That's all I can say about it.
I jumped out and followed him into the building. Aaron, I need to get in there. I might be able to see something.
Same with the Reyes house. Mrs. Reyes's attorney petitioned the courts to allow her back into her home.
He lowered his voice.
She's been there over a week.
Let's go.
I'll talk to her.
Explain why I need to walk around. My patience had worn thin. I knew the cases were related and feared the killer would strike again soon. 8 more times if my theory held.
You need a uniform and credentials.
He motioned to the hall that held HR. That'll take too long. I tapped my temple. What about Stuart Black's car? Is it still out back in processing?
Yes.
I'll start there. But it would help if I could get on these scenes.
There's nothing I can do.
He turned and walked toward his office. I stood stunned. Since when did Aaron not trust in my theories? I knew the answer. Since he started seeing someone else. I didn't care for the new by-the-books Aaron. Uniforms and badges could wait. Stuart Black's car sat in a high-tech crime lab garage. I grabbed the clipboard from the wall and scanned the report. The investigator's signature on the last page meant they'd completed processing it for evidence. I needed a reflective surface to read the past. The driver's side window wouldn't work. Not only had the bullet shattered the glass, but dried blood coated most of the surface. I touched the back driver's side window and caught movement from the street. Nothing useful. The visions from the windshield were better. A man peered through into the car a split second before Stuart Black's brains ended up in the passenger's seat. The shooter had dark hair and a similar build to Michael Adams. My luck continued to improve when I found one of the forensic artists in the break room. An hour later, I had a picture and a photocopy of the man who killed Stuart Black, and possibly Gavin Partridge. I needed to confirm the lead before I handed it over to Aaron. I went to my desk, pulled out the Partridge file, and added Michael Adams's number to my contacts list. Gavin Partridge's spirit hadn't visited me since the day I learned about the 3 French hens. I needed to find the ghost and have a chat. The best place to do that was with his husband. Mr. Adams, this is Tessa Lamar. Is this a good time to talk?
Hi, Tessa. Any news on the investigation?
Officially, no, but I need to talk to you. Do you mind if I come by?
Sure, I'll be home.
See you soon. I went for my purse and sighed. I could call a cab, but my bank balance had gone from bad to abysmal since the fire. I wanted to put my head down and cry. I hadn't had to bum rides since I was a teenager. I couldn't ask one of the officers to drive me to a crime scene without risking Aaron hearing about it.
Hey, Tessa. Sorry about your apartment.
Samuels peeked over the top of my cubicle wall.
Smoking with the birds again?
On any other day, Samuels amused me as much as he annoyed me. Today, nothing could make me laugh. Can I borrow your car?
Truck? And hell no. You aren't good on 2 feet, let alone 4 wheels.
He came around to the cubicle entrance and folded his arms.
Where's your car?
At my place. My keys didn't make it out of the fire. He didn't need to know I had new keys, but I couldn't get to the car, nor could I legally drive.
I have some time. Where do you need to go?
No. I couldn't have him chauffeuring me to visit Michael. I smiled. I have a GYN appointment. He blanched and held up his hands.
TMI.
My birth control pills were destroyed in the fire, I bluffed. But it occurred to me that I did, in fact, need to replace my contraceptives. Then again, the way things were going in my love life, I had time.
Did your cash make it out?
I had to buy new everything. I'm broke. Samuels pulled out his wallet and handed me a couple of 20s.
Consider it a loan until you get back on your feet. Call one of those ride-share places.
You mean like Uber or
pick me up? I'd never used a cab, let alone a place called Pick Me Up.
They're cheaper than a taxi.
Thanks. You're a lifesaver. I stuffed the cash in my purse and gave him a quick, non-regulation hug. He patted my back and whispered,
Be careful, Tessa. Call me if you need anything.
Other than a ride to the girly doctor?
Yes, I draw the line at gynos and tampon runs. I'll leave that to one of the guys who's having fun with your lady parts.
He chuckled and walked away. I hurried to the exit and called for a ride. While waiting, I called the pharmacy. Chapter 26. As luck would have it, I had a chatty pick-me-up driver full of Christmas spirit. He prattled on about his plans for the holidays while carols blared on the radio. I scrolled through my phone and quietly panicked that Thanksgiving was 3 days away. May hadn't mentioned it, but she wouldn't. She didn't have to confirm a meal that she'd cooked for as long as I could remember.
I love Christmas, don't you?
He smiled at me in the rearview mirror. I glanced at him, then out the window. It's a little early, isn't it?
Never too early for Christmas carols. I'm Steve, by the way.
He edged onto the freeway, singing jingle bells with the radio. I frowned at the car next to us. The woman driving wore a Santa hat and huge smile. The 20-minute drive had turned into the trip from hell. Steve turned the music up and belted out Oh Holy Night. Dogs 3 counties over howled along. After 3 more carols, he grinned at me in the rear view.
Pretty girl like yourself, I'm sure you have a boyfriend. What'd you say your name was again?
Tessa. I jabbed my hand between the front seats. Get off here! Steve yanked the wheel, crossed a line of traffic, and clipped a construction barrier to reach the exit ramp. Another car leaving the highway rammed into the back quarter panel, sending us into a spin. The car busted the guardrail and came to a stop. I leaped out and moved away from the accident as fast as my shaking legs would move. I'd seen movies where cars went over bridges, and I didn't want to live through it. Steve called after me,
Hey, this is going to get me fired. Hey, wait, you didn't pay your fare.
I walked down the exit ramp and sat under the bridge. My stomach churned hard enough I thought I might see my breakfast again. I couldn't take another thing, not one more terrible, awful thing. I patted my pocket and realized I'd left my phone in the back seat. You've got to be kidding me. I don't know how long I sat under the overpass feeling sorry for myself, but a uniformed police officer called to me from the road.
Are you Tessa? Were you just involved in a motor vehicle accident?
Damn it. I scrambled down the slope toward him. Yes, I didn't mean to leave the scene, but the car was over the edge and the driver was singing Christmas music. I left my phone up there. I'm having a dreadful day.
It's all right, madam. Can you tell me what happened?
My apartment burned down, and I can't drive until I get a new license.
What caused the accident?
Oh, I chose my words carefully. The pick-me-up driver cut across a lane to get to the exit, and the other driver hit us. He nodded.
Can I see some ID?
A trickle of fear ran down my spine. I wasn't driving, but I'd caused the accident by yelling at the driver to exit the highway. My ID burned in my apartment. I work for OCPD. You can call and verify everything with Detective Richard Samuels. The officer smiled.
I thought you looked familiar. You're Aaron Tessa. I'll give Burns a call. He can come pick you up.
I couldn't have him call Aaron. Not when I'd lied to Samuels. No, please don't. I'm running late for an appointment. I just need to get my phone and call another cab. His expression grew serious.
Tessa, you're bleeding. You should get your head checked out. I'm calling an ambulance.
I touched the side of my head and my fingers came away sticky. Blood. My blood. Oh, God. The ground beneath me shifted, forcing me to sit. The world spun faster and tied my stomach into a hard knot. Call Burns. I don't want an ambulance. As much as I didn't want Aaron to see me like this, I couldn't afford to be carted away to the hospital. The officer radioed for assistance. Within minutes, a cruiser pulled up and he ushered me into the front seat. I held a towel to my head and counted backward from 100. I had no idea what would happen when I reached 0, but the activity kept me awake and focused. Another officer brought my purse and cell phone.
We ticketed the driver for several infractions.
I grinned. I hope they included unlawful singing of Christmas carols and improper hitting on a paying passenger.
Cute. I'll have to remember those.
He eased the towel away from my head.
You should get that checked out. You're going to need stitches.
Aaron's voice caught my attention. I turned my head too quickly, and the scenery around me flickered. My stomach revolted, but I managed to keep from throwing up. Aaron and the officer exchanged a few words. Then his beautiful blue eyes met mine.
Tessa, I'm calling EMS.
No, listen to me. I'll be fine. I don't want an ambulance. The hospital's a couple of blocks away. Please drive me. He ground his teeth.
Are you officially refusing medical assistance?
Stop treating me like a case. I'm not going to sue you if I die between here and there. My attempt at humor fell flat, but the car seemed to tilt back and forth like a fair ride. He frowned and helped me out of the car.
I'm tired of breaking rules for you.
I held on to him to stay upright as the pain in my head changed from a dull ache to an insistent throb. And I'm tired of the men in my life acting like total jerks. Chapter 27. Aaron walked me to his car with his arm around my waist. I didn't think May would object to my leaning against him in my current state. I doubted I could take 2 steps on my own. The press of his body against my side woke the firebird. My skin flushed and my breath caught. I'm okay to walk. I pulled away and staggered, ending up back in his arms. He tightened his grip on my hip.
You have a concussion. Stop biting me or I'm calling EMS.
The firebird surged upward against my shields and took my knees from under me. I sank against Aaron for support. I need away from these people. What? I'm going to shift into a flaming bird? I had to think of something drastic. I needed privacy before my damned spirit animal outed herself to the world. I have to pee. Now. It's an emergency.
Are you serious?
He took one look at my face and scooped me into his arms. With long-legged strides, he carried me to the side of the car facing the wall and opened the door.
I'll block the view from here. Hurry up.
My head felt like an overripe melon ready to split. Fresh blood trickled down my scalp, and the world around me blurred. My spirit animal stirred again, struggling to break free of her cage, namely me. I couldn't shift in front of him, but I couldn't stop it. Call Bryson now. Don't freak out.
What the hell? Tessa?
Aaron reached for me as the world spun and faded to black. I woke in bed with a large body pressed against me. The sun either rose or set, judging by the light outside the windows. I touched the side of my head, surprised to find not only had the wound healed, but someone had cleaned the blood. Bryson stirred beside me.
Hey, feeling better?
Mm-hmm. I curled closer, nuzzling my face into his chest. Waking up beside him didn't happen as often as I would have liked. I planned to take advantage of it.
How's your head?
Sleep had turned his naturally deep voice raspy, sexy. Healed? I circled his nipple with my tongue. He tensed and rolled to his back.
We're not alone.
Wait, what? Something brushed my calf, and it occurred to me someone was behind me. I reached back and felt hard muscle. Oh, my goodness.
Good morning, sunshine.
Aaron rolled to his side and wrapped his arm around me. I froze, afraid to move. I'd never been in bed with two men. Frankly, I didn't understand why I was now. What time is it? How long was I out? Aaron's grip tightened.
3 days. It's Thanksgiving morning.
3 days? I struggled to sit upright, shoving Aaron's arm away. What happened that I was out for 3 days?
You should get dressed, and we'll talk.
Bryson sat up, and the covers fell away to reveal the long, bare lines of his body. My voice came out shrill. I've been in bed with both of you for 72 hours? Bryson sighed and ran his hand through my hair. His touch took the edge off my nerves.
Not the entire time. We took turns.
I touched my chest, then lower, and realized I'd slept between two men, naked as the day I was born. Where are my clothes? I glanced around the unfamiliar room. Where the hell am I?
My place?
Aaron rolled over. A need to get the heck out of there overwhelmed me, but fear kept me rooted to the mattress. I didn't dare look over my shoulder as the bed shifted. Judging from the amount of skin I'd felt, Aaron had slept in the buff too. A dresser drawer opened, and a t-shirt landed in front of me, and then a pair of basketball shorts.
You can borrow these.
Thanks. I slid the shirt over my head and wiggled into the shorts beneath the blankets. Will one of you tell me what happened? Aaron handed Bryson a pair of pajama pants while I waited for an explanation. Bryson pulled them on and sat cross-legged beside me.
After the car accident, you shifted. Good thinking having Aaron call me. You surprised the hell out of me. 1 minute you were standing there, the next, a fireball shot into the sky.
Aaron tied the string on his sweats and propped himself against the headboard. Did anyone see me? I chewed my thumbnail, trying to recall the crash or anything that followed.
If they did, they would have assumed the fire was part of the accident. The pick-me-up car you hired exploded a split second after you did.
Aaron grinned. I stared until he lowered his eyes. How could he act so nonchalant about the firebird and the accident? Did I blow up the car? He shrugged.
No one was injured. As far as I'm concerned, no harm, no foul.
Bryson frowned.
You got lucky. No one's reported a flaming bird, UFO, or anything odd. Be thankful.
I didn't feel lucky. People could have died because of me. I needed a minute to calm down, to think, to freak out without an audience. I scooted to the end of the bed.
Where are you going?
Bryson sighed. To the restroom. You're welcome to come with if you think I need a chaperone. He shook his head and gave Aaron an I told you so look. Aaron ran his hand over the back of his neck. I went into the bathroom and shut the door. The look they'd exchanged did nothing to calm my nerves. I wanted to lash out at them, yell and throw a tantrum, though I couldn't understand why. Calm down, Tessa. I splashed water on my face. For someone who had a concussion and slept for 3 days, I looked pretty good. My skin glowed, and my hair looked redder, brighter somehow. I leaned closer to the mirror and gasped. A thin, red ring surrounded my pupils, and my irises had changed to an emerald green with flecks of orange and red. Bryson, can you come in here? He entered the bathroom with a concerned expression.
Are you all right?
What's wrong with my eyes? I turned and opened them wide. He took my chin between his thumb and forefinger and tilted my head toward the light.
You didn't shift back entirely.
What? I looked back into the mirror. Why?
It sometimes happens when we shift after an injury, but it usually fades in an hour or so.
I lowered my voice. Is Aaron okay? I mean, did he lose it?
He was more upset we didn't tell him before now. He knew we were holding something back, but didn't expect this.
Bryson ran his hand through his hair.
We've put him in more danger.
We? You mean me? Memories of Aaron in ICU because the wrong person connected him to me flashed through my mind. I leaned against the vanity to stay upright. I should have let the elders bind my magic.
Tessa, you're both my responsibility. I could have done a forgetting spell, but I needed him.
I don't want to be your responsibility or your obligation.
Then what do you want?
It doesn't matter what I want. I shook my head and pushed past him. Aaron sat up when we returned to the room.
Everything okay?
What happened after I shifted? I overreacted. I knew it. They knew it. But I couldn't stop myself. Every word that came out of my mouth grew louder. He shrugged.
I called Bryson. He told me he'd find you and bring you here.
I turned. Why here?
I didn't think May and Dottie would like the idea of the two of us showing up naked, and I needed Aaron's help.
I blew off his logic, not ready to acknowledge he'd done the right thing. Why did I wake up between you two?
I coaxed you into shifting back, but you were still unconscious.
Wait. You mean I didn't heal after the change? That sobered me. I hadn't realized how much I'd come to expect quick and easy healing. Bryson frowned.
Not entirely. The skin-to-skin contact with your mates completed the healing.
I stopped processing everything he said after mates. Plural. Mates. What did that mean? Was this some sort of ploy on their parts to share me?
Your head injury must have been worse than we thought. Sometimes a brain bleed or a swelling causes coma.
Aaron said. I don't care about comas. I glanced between them. Mates? Bryson nodded.
Aaron shares a part of my soul. I didn't realize the implications until I needed him to help me heal you last night.
You told him what happened in the hospital? The dizziness returned, though I didn't think it had anything to do with my brain swelling.
I'm cool with it. Beats the alternative, right?
Aaron chuckled.
This is the last of the secrets between us.
Yes. I doubted he knew everything, but I didn't care to open that can of worms. Aaron shrugged.
It explains why I'm drawn to the two of you.
Great. So you're attracted to me because of the same magical crap as Bryson? Are either of you interested in just me? Aaron bowed his head, then looked up and met my eyes.
I meant what I said in the car.
Memories of our kiss flickered through my mind, and my anger faded into a numb sense of resignation.
Does it matter what brought us to this point?
Bryson sat beside Aaron. I don't know. I stared at the two of them. No little girl dreamed of growing up and finding out she's stuck with a guy because he's the last of her race, or worse, stuck with two guys because they share some magical connection. So what now? We buy a giant bed and move in together? Bryson frowned.
You're getting ahead of yourself again. We need to focus on the more important issue first.
My lack of control? He nodded.
Your reaction today feels off. Is it the firebird?
I stilled, considering his question. My spirit animal did feel restless, but I couldn't be sure if my anger came from her or me. I'm angry and I don't understand why.
We'll figure this out. But we have to learn to trust each other first.
My phone rang and Aaron reached for it.
Speaking of trust, it's Michael Adams again. Would you mind telling me why you were on your way to meet him?
Chapter 28. After apologizing to Michael for not showing up to our meeting, I sat on Aaron's sofa. My two mates stared, waiting for an explanation. I thought about fibbing, but I doubted they'd believe anything except the truth, and even that was pushing it. Outnumbered, and more than a little freaked out by the situation, I decided to come clean. Gavin Partridge haunted me for a couple of days after his murder. His spirit was still too confused to give me any useful information about his death. I thought if I could talk to him, maybe I could find the link between the 4 crimes. I have a sketch of the shooter. I planned to show it to Michael and Gavin.
Did you plan to run it by me?
Aaron's expression hardened. I wanted to see if I could find a connection first.
I told you to stay away from Adams. He's the top suspect in the murder.
I shook my head. He couldn't have killed his husband.
I disagree.
I sighed. I hope you're wrong.
Me too.
Aaron shook his head.
You told Samuels you had an appointment with your gynecologist.
I couldn't tell him I planned to break into a death scene. Bryson folded his arms.
Can we agree, right here, right now, that you won't do anything illegal until we get your magic under control?
Aaron added,
How about you won't do anything illegal, period?
I'll agree if the 2 of you stop treating me like a child. Bryson grinned.
If you stop acting like one.
Fine. I folded my arms, realized I was pouting, and unfolded them. You 2 need to stop ganging up on me. Aaron said,
We're not ganging up on you. We're worried about you. You've given us reason for concern.
I wanted to tell him none of this was my fault, but it sounded hollow to my ears. How do I control the firebird?
I can teach you to a point, but your magic is stronger than mine.
Achila paid me a visit. Aaron sat beside me.
Who's Achila?
My real mother. Her spirit visits me sometimes, usually when things are going south.
Like now.
He took my hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A sense of peace washed over me, reminding me of the feeling of home that Bryson's touch provided. I knew deep down that the feeling meant we were connected.
What did she say?
Bryson took a seat across from us. She never speaks plainly. It's always metaphors and poetry. She said, my spirit animal is fire and magic. I have to feed her or she'll die. She can either give or destroy. I left out the bit about being a child. These 2 didn't need any validation. They stared, as if waiting for me to continue. Aaron ran his thumb over the back of my hand, and Bryson appeared lost in thought. I couldn't take the silence another second. Achila said it needs nourishment like my human body, and Dottie said Charlie told her the same thing. I mean, what do they mean I have to feed her?
Nourishment can be different things. Food, spiritual growth, exercise, even love.
Bryson stood and paced the living room. I'll go to church 3 times a week or dance around a fire every day, but I'm not thrilled with the idea of hunting and eating rats. I made a face, once again trying to add some humor to a frustrating situation. Aaron's face brightened.
I can help with the exercise and emotional nourishment.
Bryson smirked.
You can try, but she has a tendency to catch fire when she's aroused.
Aaron's eyes widened.
That day at Charlie's when you ran out, your skin was so hot.
Yep. I chewed my thumbnail. He looked between us.
So, you two haven't...
Nope. I stared at my hands.
I can understand not wanting third-degree burns, but can't you do it in a pool or something?
That's what I said. I fell a little more for Aaron. We shared the same sense of humor. Bryson sighed and knelt before me, ignoring Aaron.
Listen to me. I'm old-fashioned. Sex means something to me. If I take you to bed and things don't work out, it'll be harder for me to walk away.
Aaron drew a breath.
Damn.
I sighed. Things have to work out. Neither of us can walk away. Can we?
No.
Bryson hung his head.
Which means I'm stuck with the two of you too.
Aaron ran his hand down my back. I thought you were seeing someone? Aaron furrowed his brows.
What gave you that idea?
I called you early one morning. You said you weren't alone.
That was when you two weren't talking. I got Bryson shit-faced the night before. He was on the couch.
Oh. I could imagine the conversation between them that night. Aaron pulled me to his side.
Back to the real problem. Why don't we think outside the box and invest in fireproof suits?
I braced myself for Bryson's response. I'd suggested things like that in the past, and his reactions ranged from frustration to anger. His shoulders tensed, but the corners of his eyes crinkled. His laughter took me by surprise, so much so I wondered if he'd finally snapped. Aaron's phone rang, and he went into the bedroom to answer it, leaving me alone with Bryson. Still kneeling, he stared into my eyes, as if he looked hard enough he might understand me. I'm sorry, I whispered.
For what?
That I lost control. Again.
Don't apologize. You were seriously injured. We'll keep working on it.
I thought I was making progress, and then this happened.
You're much better at it now than you were a month ago.
He took my hands.
Talk to me. What's really going on?
Sometimes I feel so close to you, I think we are two halves of a whole. Then I remember we hardly know each other. Every time we turn around, something else happens, be it John Macon or this thing with Aaron. And I remember we were thrown together because of what we are. I need to know this is real between us and not our spirit animals or the elders calling the shots. You've asked me the same question. I know it bothers you too.
I love you, not your magic or your spirit animal. You.
He wrapped his arms around me. I closed my eyes and relaxed into his embrace. The tension of the previous weeks morphed into a deep-seated need to be close to this man. I closed my eyes and prayed for a solution to this mess. Aaron cleared his throat.
I hate to interrupt, but there's been another murder.
Bryson pulled back, but kept his eyes on mine. He nodded slightly, as if trying to convey that he understood how I felt.
Tessa, I think we have your 5 golden rings.
Aaron's voice rose, pulling my attention from Bryson.
Lucy Cullen, 5-time Olympic gold medal winner. Someone slit her throat with a blade from an ice skate this morning.
These killings have to be related. I'd watched the figure skater compete in the last Winter Olympics. The idea that someone so young and full of life was murdered made my stomach roil. I'm going with you.
In my clothes?
Aaron grinned.
You must really want to churn the rumor mill.
Forget it. I need to find Gavin Partridge and show him the sketch. If that doesn't work, I can go to the crime scenes. If I can make contact, maybe we can stop this before 6 geese a laying. Aaron looked at me as if I'd lost my mind.
Geese?
That's the next day in the song. On the 6th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 6 geese a laying.
I'd like to see what this guy comes up with for that.
Bryson looked me over.
We need clothes.
Aaron had dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt. He clipped his badge near his gun on his hip.
I have to get to the ice rink. I'll call in and tell CSI to allow you access. Did you pick up a new badge?
No. I didn't want to hear him complain about my acting rash and irresponsible again. It wouldn't matter. We flew here. I don't even have my purse. Aaron looked at Bryson as if to say something smart-assed, then turned back to me.
Your purse is in my room, but you still don't have a license. I assume he's driving you around today? Can you drop us off at May's to get my Rover?
Bryson's expression grew serious.
I'll drive you where you need to go. Until we know you're completely healed, one of us will be with you. You're gonna need some credentials to get into the rink.
Aaron slid his phone into his pocket and grabbed his keys.
Both of you.
I frowned. Is there someone working today who can help me? It's Thanksgiving.
Your badge is waiting for you to pick it up, but it'll take months and a mountain of paperwork to get something for a civilian.
Aaron patted his pockets, gun, and badge. Bryson grinned.
I can be there without being seen. You can be invisible?
Aaron stared slack-jawed. I said, he means he can shift and watch from the trees or wait in the car.
Damn, I always wanted invisibility as my superpower.
Aaron motioned to the door.
Let's go find a serial killer.
Chapter 29. May and Dottie were on the porch swing when Aaron pulled up the drive. I took one look at their curious expressions and sidestepped behind Bryson. We didn't have time to answer questions. Not when those questions involved our borrowed clothing, Aaron dropping us off, or my lack of shoes. Bryson must have read my mind because he whistled for Maddie. The dog bounded around the side of the house with a slobbery tennis ball. He bent down to pry it out of her mouth.
Oh, no, you don't. We have things to discuss with the two of you,
May called. Dang it. I hung my head.
I called her when you were injured.
Bryson wiped his hand on his pants.
Let me do the talking.
We walked to the porch side by side like scolded children.
Where have you been? Why didn't either of you call and let me know what was going on?
May stood with her hands on her hips. Bryson said,
Sorry, ma'am. Tessa didn't wake up until this morning.
I appreciate you calling after the accident, but you should have kept us informed.
She looked us over with a disapproving twist of her lips, then shook her head.
As long as everyone is all right, you're both adults, but I'd like to know what's going on. We worry.
Dottie winked. Does this mean you've mended fences? Bryson said,
We're working on it.
Tessa Marie, you and I will have a talk later. You must have forgotten my advice. Since you look like you've healed, I expect you to take me to the mall for Black Friday tomorrow.
Graham May turned from me to Bryson.
We'll be putting up the lights on Saturday and the tree after church on Sunday. Just because we aren't feeding an army today doesn't mean we're skimping on Christmas.
Bryson nodded.
I closed the medicine shop until January. I have all weekend free.
Good. Let that jackass Buck Oldham stew.
May shifted her dentures around.
Serves him right.
Graham, we have to hustle. I promise we'll get it all done. I leaned in and gave them each a hug.
The lady from the Red Cross dropped your license and birth certificate off yesterday.
I sighed in relief. The day brightened with that off my list. That's wonderful. I'll get it later. I need to change before we go to the station.
What's so important you're working on Thanksgiving?
May held up her hand.
Don't tell me.
I don't want to know.
Dottie grinned and started the swing in motion, signaling the conversation had ended.
You two take care. And be home for dinner, May added. We've already started cooking.
6 sharp, I smiled.
If you'll excuse me, I need to change as well.
Bryson turned and walked inside. May attempted to whisper, but her idea of quiet had a lot in common with a regular speaking voice.
I thought you weren't going to be so available.
I didn't mean to mess up the plan. I flashed her a sheepish smile.
Mm-hmm.
She shook her head. I went inside and changed into slacks. Luckily, I'd left an extra OCPD polo in my office in case of emergency. Things were looking up. I tossed my makeup into a bag and sat to put my shoes on. Despite my rushing around, Bryson waited for me on the porch when I returned.
Ready?
He gave me a quick once-over. I'll do my makeup in the car. I gave May and Dottie another quick hug. See you tonight.
Don't be late, Tessa Marie.
May narrowed her eyes at Bryson.
You either.
Bryson smiled and dipped his chin. The woman loved to give him a hard time, and he took it as if her cantankerous words were hugs. And I loved him for it. I hurried towards Bryson's SUV. He held the door open for me and kissed my cheek before I climbed in. I believed he understood my feelings, and it felt right between us, not settled in like an old pair of sneakers. He slid into the driver's seat and started the engine.
Why are you grinning?
I'm happy, I guess.
Me too.
Are you concerned about closing the shop?
No. I'm looking forward to sculpting again.
He focused on the road.
I have a couple of large commissions to finish.
I plan to use the free time to plan Haley's baby shower. I remembered the other mother-to-be and sighed. And I should spend some time with Darlene.
She'd like that, Tessa.
I know, I don't want to end up raising my sibling.
I don't remember anyone asking you to do that.
I shrugged. Darlene didn't raise me. I have no reason to think she'll raise this one.
Do you want kids?
The concern in his voice stilled my heart. The elders assumed we would have children to continue our race, but no one had ever asked me if I wanted kids. Until now. I don't know. I mean, I may when I'm older, but I don't know.
I love kids. I always thought I'd have a house full.
He seemed resigned. Not for nothing, Bryson, but you have a big head. Your sons would tear me in too.
Nice, Tessa.
Maybe we shouldn't have kids. It's cruel. I mean, if we aren't supposed to marry outsiders, who would our children marry? Each other?
I, for one, hope there are more of us out there.
He turned his head and laughed.
Let's not borrow trouble. We should focus on today. Tomorrow will come whether we worry or not.
I let my head rest against the seat and closed my eyes. He had a point, of course, but living in the moment was a heck of a lot easier to say than it was to do. I pulled my hand back and opened my cosmetics bag.
You're beautiful without it.
He motioned to the makeup. Says you. I leaned closer to the mirror to apply a little eyeshadow. Think of it like war paint. It gives me confidence.
I get that.
He drummed on the steering wheel with his thumbs, looked out the window, to me, and back to the road.
Are you all right with the situation with Aaron?
I opened a tube of mascara. I don't understand it enough to know if I'm okay with it. It was a little odd waking up naked with the two of you.
Because you didn't know where you were or how you got there. Would you be willing to do it again?
I turned my head so fast that I left a trail of black goo across my temple.
Sleeping with the two of you or sleeping with the two of you?
Sleeping. You can't kiss me without risking spontaneous combustion. How can you think about making love with the two of us?
My mouth hung open. I'd had a similar conversation with Aaron about sharing me. I never, in my wildest, naughtiest dreams, imagined having it with Brasson. You want the three of us to share a bed all night with no monkey business?
Yes, and I want to figure out what Achila and Charlie meant by feeding your spirit animal. I should know, but I don't. I've never had the problems you have with control.
Gee, thanks.
It wasn't meant as an insult. It could be the firebird, or it could be a combination of things, but
I know. We have to be careful. I just don't understand how sharing a bed with you and Aaron is being careful.
because you're hung up on the idea we'll end up having sex. It's your measuring stick for your relationships.
I narrowed my eyes. I'd thought the same thing about myself, but hearing it from him pissed me off. He smiled and motioned to the mascara smear.
You might want to take care of that, in case it stains.
I turned to the mirror and scrubbed the blob. I can't figure out how being a part of a three-person relationship would work. I mean, are you and Aaron attracted to each other? Bryson looked at me and frowned.
Would that bother you?
No? Maybe? I don't know. I finished applying the mascara. I thought you were jealous?
I was taken off guard at first, but I'm okay with it as long as everything is in the open.
You didn't answer my question. Bryson sighed.
You're doing it again.
What? He pulled into a parking space at the station and turned to me.
Borrowing trouble.
Chapter 30. An hour later, I had a brand new temporary victim's advocate badge and a handful of new shirts. What I didn't have was the courage to face Bryson, not after the conversation on the drive over. On some level, having two men, the two men I'd grown to love, seemed like a dream. What woman wouldn't want to snuggle between those two every night? However, I didn't have a great track record at dating one guy. How in the world would I manage two? Worse yet, they already had a tendency to gang up on me. How much worse would that be if we were involved? One thing I did know, I was sick to death of people telling me to give it time.
Tessa Lamar?
A man I didn't know by name called from across the rows of cubicles. Yes? He jogged over.
Detective Burns called. He asked me to allow you into the evidence room.
Evidence room? My addled brain took a moment to catch up. Oh, for the recent murder cases?
Yes.
He extended his hand.
I'm Zach.
I shook his hand. Nice to meet you. Zach led me to the back of the building. He went on about procedures, but I only heard every third word or so. How could I try to read the evidence with Zach watching? Not to mention the security camera. What if I flipped out? Is it possible to have my associate inside the room while I examine the evidence? I dug through my purse for my phone.
Only authorized personnel are allowed back here.
He cocked his head to the side.
Is there a problem?
No, let's do this. Zach handed me an evidence list for each case.
Notate the numbers of the items you'd like to examine.
Where is the sheet from the Black murder?
Unavailable. CSI still has most of the evidence out back.
I nodded, flipping through page after page, looking for the glass from the Reyes case. I'd like to see Ray 2578-565. He nodded and left me in the small room. I scanned the reports until he returned with an evidence bag. Don't you need equipment? The preliminary forensic reports are in the next room. Would you like me to get them?
I shook my head as I opened the bag. Thanks, that won't be necessary. Zach stepped forward and smiled.
You're the psychic that found those missing kids.
Yes, but I didn't find them alone. I had help.
I'll be damned. I heard we had a psychic working here. Everyone has, but no one knew for sure. You know how it is.
His smile broadened.
Are the other rumors true?
Which rumors?
You know, about you, Burns, and the big guy.
His cheeks flushed. I'm not sleeping with Detective Burns and the civilian who helped solve the case, if that's what you're asking. My worst fear had come to life, giving me a glimpse at my future if I chose to have a relationship with Bryson and Aaron. People would judge me.
I didn't mean to imply,
he stammered. Yes, you did. I stared at him until he backed away.
Sorry.
Zach, the rumors, and my relationships had to wait. I noted several additional pieces from the Mercier case on a slip of scrap paper and handed it to him. This process reminded me of losing an earring at the beach. I could sift through every grain of sand in a 2-mile radius and still not find it. I needed to go to the scenes, touch the windows and mirrors to find what I needed. The face of the shooter. I pulled the glass from the evidence bag. When I focused, visions exploded behind my eyes. I took a calming breath and forced my emotions down. Mr. Reyes filled the glass. He took a sip, but stilled when he heard a sound. A door opening? Another man came into view, blonde, shorter than the victim. I felt different types of fear from them, one tinged with concern and excitement, the other a bone-deep terror. The gunshot rang out, and a body hit the floor, but I couldn't see the actual murder. At some point during the vision, Zach returned and set his hand on my shoulder.
Are you all right?
I nodded, not trusting my voice. I had to push through and finish reading the evidence, though I wanted to run from the room with every fiber of my being. The next evidence bag contained a framed picture of Tiffany Mercier taken from her mother's nightstand. The second I touched it, images flooded me. I couldn't tear my hand away, nor could I slow the images from drowning me. Ms. Mercier was awake when the killer came into her room. She couldn't defend herself against the gun. He'd pressed the barrel to her forehead and fired.
Ms. Lamar!
Zach grabbed for me, managing to break my fall. I stared open-mouthed, unable to form a sentence.
What happened? Do I need to call EMS?
I shook my head.
Tessa?
I eased to my feet. My head throbbed as if experiencing residual pain from the murder. I'm fine. It happens sometimes when I do too many readings. I need to make a call.